you check the children.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
And you got Jaime and Fuego here.
And we are here to do a review of a movie that is brand new in the theaters, but is going to be available on Shudder within like a month and a half or something. Is that correct, Fuego?
Yes, correct. I'm trying to double check. That's the one thing that I had not made mention of, but and you said it to me just before we started filming, and it was the one thing I did not take into account. So yeah, getting an early theatrical release in theaters, obviously, and then they're going to be like kind of shepherding it over to the Shudder and AMC Plus, which is kind of the overbearer of Shudder. And so yeah,
like what they did with When Evil Lurks last year.
Yep, exactly, and they're going to be doing the same thing with Desmalchian's Late Night with the Devil.
I'm so excited about that. I'll definitely see that in the theater.
Yeah, stoked for that one too. Although who knows, maybe it'll show up at IHSFF International Horror Sci-Fi Film Festival. Our buddies over there at Phoenix Film. So
when is that again?
We're about a month out, thankfully.
Okay.
So
okay.
yeah, we'll have to make sure we prepare properly if we're going to be covering some of that. So
anyway, that's a ton of meandering. We're getting to the fact that we want to review Stopmotion today. Obviously, you can see that in the window around us here. That's what we're going to be reviewing today. We did a trailer reaction for this film not too long ago, and I remember being intrigued by it. I was like, oh, this could be really cool. And then the movie came out, and a lot of people were like raving about it and talking about how, man, this is one of the best horror movies I've seen in a while and all this stuff. And so unfortunately for me, it became, as we talk about so much, Fuego, the burden of expectations, unfortunately didn't allow the movie to sing as much as I'm sure they wanted it to for me. I thought it was a well-made movie for sure. It was an interesting enough movie, but unfortunately it wasn't unique enough. We've seen main characters spiral in a similar fashion before numerous times, and that's unfortunately what really stood out about this to me, is that we've seen this kind of thing before, but it was done in a relatively new way via the stop motion storytelling. However, because of the way they structured the stop motion storytelling, a lot of the time through the movie, I was like, okay, when are we going to get to the next thing? Like the next night, like, you know what I mean? Like that's what I was waiting on. So it was, unfortunately, it was more a mixed bag with me than it was full on awesomeness. Like I was hoping it was going to be. What about for you?
I loved it. Yeah, I did. And, it was very much so because I saw this actress in a Aussie film, if I recall correctly, called The Nightingale. And that was not horror. It was like a different sort of...
horrific, for sure.
Disgusting things transpiring, And, I even saw, I think some people on like Twitter, I think it was either Haunted Meg or somebody else, who was just like, yeah, she needs to be in consideration for newer Scream Queen. I don't know if I would go that far, but I thought her performance was great. The fact that it is very much another familiar rumination on abuse and how it manifests itself, and without getting into spoilery sort of details, how it can detach us from reality. That was the stuff that I really enjoyed. And I don't know, with so many films being produced and made at this particular point, I feel like it's getting tougher and tougher to really stand yourself out from the pack as far as like that transcendent sort of things that a lot of humans experience in their lives. And you're like, yeah, it's familiar, but yet in the same rate, it's like, well, it's familiar because we all experience it. But also to your point, dude, it's the fact that when you really make it more nuanced and personal as opposed to trivial and familiar, that's like the borderline, I guess. So I was really into it, man. I felt it was, for a first-time director especially. This guy had just done a few things here and there as far as lots of stop motion. He actually did a basket case little stop motion short thing, which was like bonus features, and it was either basket case 2 or 3. It was like Belial's Nightmare or something. And so this guy, he has familiarity with what is... It's a smaller portion of the storytelling, the actual stop motion, but the stop motion I mean, I thought looked rad when it was implemented. So
it was very cool, but here's well, I mean, I suppose we can get to one of my gripes when we get to
please do, man.
the special effects, right? So let's keep this in order. So we talked about kind of our overall thoughts. You loved it. I wanted to love it, but was a little underwhelmed by it. I was overwhelmed by some of the stop motion coolness and stuff like that. Like I wish, but I also at the same time wish there was a little bit of difference in some of it, which again we'll get to in the special effects portion of this. But story-wise,
everybody's saying it's like a Tool music video is what a lot of people are saying.
Yeah, well, I mean,
like an actual...
Jesus, it's like a whole generation of people. Their only experience with stop motion is Tool,
which is hilarious. You know, it's like a specific contingent of horror music sort of people. But you know, the fact that I've seen that comparison so heavily just kind of amuses me, because there's some. I mean, what was it? Mad Dog. Mad God, was great. Which was really good. And you know, there's all kinds of other people who are doing this sort of thing and have for decades. But you know,
I mean, yeah. Prototypical stuff like Nightmare Before Christmas was very stop motion esque.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Even though not exactly that, but you know.
Yeah, and I think even like you know, Two Strings and you know, all of the stuff that Leica has done over the years, Box Trolls and you know whatnot, that's all stop motion too. So it's not like this is, you know, some sort of creative resurgence, right? As far as
it's been around forever, no, but but it often is an oft ignored portion of film because it's so labor intensive and detail oriented. Which you see in the
movie too,
right?
You know, between the griping with two characters at one point. So
the story of stop motion is about this woman who is working with her mother to try and finish a stop motion film that her mother has been most recently working on. Her mother being a legend in the film stop motion industry. And her mother, though, unfortunately has, you know, started to exhibit signs of arthritis, and her hands are not really able to be used the way they used to be, which obviously in stop motion is very key.
Oh, yeah.
So she's the maestro, and our main character, the daughter, is the hands. And there's pretty early on, there's an accident that unfortunately, you know, puts the mom in the hospital, and it sends our main character down her own path, which is all part of the story, right? Her trying to come into her own, trying to make her own film instead of just making her mom's films, and because she's a part of a stop motion, you know, a group of young adults that are trying to get into the industry, and so they're all working on their own stuff. And anytime we saw that sort of stuff like featured, like especially at the party, the clown, the jester stop motion, that stuff was really cool. Like there's a lot of really interesting stuff in the movie, and I don't want to act like I didn't enjoy the movie, because I did. It just wasn't, it was a little too familiar for me. But yeah, so she moves into her own place because her mother's in the hospital now, and she starts to try and finish the film herself, but in the process of doing so, she meets a little girl that presumably lives in the building, and the little girl starts to give her ideas about making her own film, and it's about a girl lost in the woods being chased by a malevolent force, and the film starts to mirror the actual stop motion film the character is making. Where so like they talk about the first night the creature's chasing the woman, it sees her, and then that night our main character is in her new apartment and something comes knocking and it sees her through the peephole, and so everything starts to follow, you know, in that way. And I don't want to say, I won't say anything else. But you know, because I don't want to spoil too much, but that you'll see that coming. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally, dude. It's a manifestation of internal paranoia, which I thought was really well done as far as how it paralleled itself. And without like spoiling things massively, I actually enjoyed how it peered into this very niche sort of the industry where stop motion is not in vogue, everything CGI, whatever. And yet something that happens later in the film with the sister of the love interest of our main character, as far as ideas and reappropriation and so on and so forth, like that scene hit me freaking hard, dude. And I sympathize significantly with her in that bit.
Yeah, it was frustrating to see. I was like, oh man, especially because it's very exemplary of
and so personal,
artistic thievery nowadays. You know what I mean?
Where
especially and it's emblematic of today's day and age, where a lot of times the thievery happens where a small creator will make something on a platform like YouTube or TikTok, and then a larger creator will either literally rip that exact video or just copy that exact video, do the same thing, and get millions of views and claim credit for it when the other people did it first. So I liked that it was representative of the actual unfortunately what's become a societal norm recently in the artistic industry. But so she has to decide if and how to finish her story, and I'm not going to spoil anything else, but that's the long and short of how the story plays out. And while it was interesting to me, it was very predictable.
It wasn't that. I will completely concede with you about that. As much as I enjoyed it, there was a lot. There was a mystery about one particular character in this, and it was pretty evident to me early on, and I would imagine with a lot of other viewers as well, where you're just like, okay, the way that they are factoring into this, the lack of cognizance that other people in the settings are not having for such. I know I'm dancing around the issue, and I'm probably even implying a little more than I probably should, but that was very obvious. But I mean, just the obviousness doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't hit home, because of the way that the portrayal transpired, and it was very much internal as far as the weavings and the just almost further detachment that is transpiring with a certain character. It sucks when you can't spoil stuff, but I was very invested in the pathos of our lead character and everything that she is trying to just come to terms with, but also the exploratory aspect of her creativity too. So story-wise, it was engaging, if for me familiar, but not as much so for totally
Fuego,
familiar.
I guess.
Totally familiar. I'm not gonna lie about that, but we all experience familiar stuff as far as the human plight goes. So I don't know. That's the only justification I can give.
No, I got it. Acting-wise, though, it was top-notch. Everyone was on point, from our lead to her boyfriend to the people that she interacted with, to the the little girl from the building and stuff like that. It was all really well acted. There was definitely no holes in the armor there as far as that goes.
I thought it was once again, to her nastiness that she had to endure in The Nightingale, this particular actress, and she's been in a few other things. I thought she was an Aussie actress, but apparently she's Irish, so she's intermingling her talents with all of those different filmmakers of on that other side of the world, which is cool. And she has the just, I don't know, internal tortured torment sort of bit with the dynamic with her mother specifically, and yet you still have that affirmation and that love where even if you've been just made to feel inferior, it's 1 millisecond movement and all that stuff, you can still love that person, despite the fact that they were kind of being a taskmaster to you. So I thought she was tremendous. Boyfriend, he was okay. Everybody else was fairly serviceable, but her and the younger girl from the building I thought were the definite standouts. So now
I do want to specifically shout out two aspects of the film that did impress me, and that was the editing and the sound design. So the editing is shown very early on, when the first shot, quote unquote, is actually a series of hundreds of shots of our lead character and more if you pay attention. Just her face in different positions, but in similar lighting, changing lighting, and that's it. Just happens in rapid succession, and it set such a tone. I was like, that was really cool. So I took note of the editing there in particular, but the rest of the movie was well edited along with it. So I feel like that's something to shout out. The sound design specifically, though, was a big help, because there were lots of times where our character would zone out into her own headspace, and everything else would fall away and become kind of subsonic, where you could hear it, but it felt like it was under a bubble under the water. You know what I mean? Like, and that always helps bring you into a character's head, in my opinion, and out of it once they come out of it. You know, so
that was actually. Yeah, that was actually one thing I was going to ask you about, because, you know, I saw it with my partner, Catherine, and everything, and she hated those parts. She thought that they took her out of the film and whatever, and I was trying to explain to her my like perception of it was that, you know, that just gave the just full-blown essence of detachment. You know, when you're not listening, you're not seeing, you're just like, there's almost like a subtle reverberation amongst you, like just that like surrounds your, you know, just headset, more or less, and you're not paying attention to those speaking to you, those around you, anything. That, you know, it was alleged to be distracting, but I felt like it really sold how this person was falling further, you know, into just not wanting to be engaged with reality, essentially. So
I agree. So then let's talk about the effects, right? Because it's a regular live action film with some stop motion moments as they watch the film that they're making. But then the film will also show us some stop motion stuff that is more emblematic of the story as a whole when she's not watching the film. Yeah. And so that's all very interesting, very well done, very cool. But I gotta say, there was something in particular, and I won't explain how, but along the way, her puppets become upgraded, let's say.
I was curious how the upping of the ante and like how you perceive that.
So I like the idea of it, but the actual visual representation of the changes was next to nothing. Like,
it's minimal.
Yeah, minimal. Like the one character went from all white to white with some red. And and I'm like, oh, you could, like, you know, and then the other character in particular, I felt like you had some opportunity to really make it cool and grotesque.
The adversary.
And it was just the same, but a little bit bigger. You know what I mean? And I was like, so there was, to me, a couple of missed opportunities as far as the special effects go, but what they had was still very impressive. So I did still very much enjoy the implementation of the effects and the implementation of the practical gore effects that they had as well along the way.
Yeah, which there's just a tiny bit of, and it's really in the third act specifically, you know, where you start to realize a little bit more so of what is transpiring with our primary character. That was, you know, not to, you know, praise this movie exceedingly, since obviously Cecil and I have differing opinions about this one, at least a little bit. But yeah, there were two people, a couple, who walked out of the theater when something happens with the leg of a character, and they're just like, nope, peace out, like, we're done, and they just walked out. And it was like a daytime screening, you know, so it wasn't like late night, you know, prime viewing sort of scenario. But yeah, I would imagine that kind of epitomizes effectivity, but that it doesn't lean into the gore until the third act. It's very much more so kind of that psychological exploration about how this person has dealt with, you know, trauma from a loved one, and how they're trying to forge their own path, and yet realizing that they're having difficulty really, you know, based on all that repression exemplifying and, you know, just, you know, making their own voice known. So it was really more so a character kind of study, that why I like this one, you know, even more so, dude, than the stop motion, which is, you know, supplemental. It's there, but it's almost like window dressing, so to speak. It was really more so than anything about how this character was dealing and, you know, just having trouble dealing with a lot of stuff that she was not ready to acknowledge. So
yeah. No, agreed. So what do you think? Is there anything else we should touch on, or just let everyone go experience it for themselves at this point?
Not too much, man. I mean, like the sound design I thought was awesome. Where you think a character is tripping out, there's like this awesome bit of Middle Eastern, sort of like electro sort of music where just walking through the house party and stuff. I love that sequence, the slow mo and just observing of everything. I thought that bit was really rad status. Everything else, it's obviously more dialogue driven or whatever else, but that was one bit that I wanted to make mention of, because when I was making my notes after I saw it in my iPhone, I was like, I put that down specifically because I thought it was really cool. But yeah, first time director, impressive and really just swinging for the fences, man. So even though it was derivative and a little familiar in a lot of ways, I still really liked it. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. So there you go, guys. If you've seen Stop Motion, let us know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you haven't yet, let us know if this review swayed you one way or the other. I'd be very curious to know y'all's thoughts, so let us know in those comments down below. Thank you very much to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. We greatly appreciate it. And until next time, I've been Cecil Laird.
And gracias a Jaime Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.
Stay scared.